welcome back to yourTown radio and television program. My name is Debbie Hale, and I'm the Executive Director with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. And today we're talking about electric vehicles in the Monterey Bay Area. We just heard from Will Beckett, who is soon to receive a Nissan Leaf, and now we're talking with Elaine Chu, who is the second person in California to have a Chevy Volt. She's going to talk to us about how she uses it and why she uses it, what the benefits are of having an electric vehicle. So, welcome, Elaine.
Thanks, Debbie.
So, how did you get to be the second person in California to have a Chevy Volt?
I just got really lucky. I also live up in the Berkeley East Bay area, but I work in Salinas and have a place down here, and I thought, all those Bay Area dealers have long waiting lists, and they were marking up the cars a lot, so I'll go check my local Salinas dealer. And I checked like late October, November, and they only had 9 people on the list. So I said, well, sign me up, and they said, well, the first 8 are going to come in December, but the next shipment will come in February. And I'm like, I can wait till February, but let me know if anybody cancels. So somebody did, and mine was number 3 on the list, and it showed up first. And Jay Leno got his on December 17th. The 3 of us got him on December 18th, and I was one of them. And the dealer didn't even really know what to do. They said, come get your Volt.
Talk about the benefits of buying local. I love it.
And no markup over the MSRP.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So why did you choose the Chevy Volt?
Well, as you heard Will talking about, I actually have a 100-mile commute that I make twice a week. I live in Berkeley, I work in Menlo Park, but I also work in Salinas. So for me, a Leaf is 100 nominal miles, and if I wanted to make a little detour, I got lost on the way, I might be worrying, am I going to have to plug in on the way? And I have, although this is my first production, I have had 2 other electric vehicles. I had a city car, which was a 1976 vehicle, and a Sparrow, which looks like a little jelly bean, if you've ever saw that one. It was made in Hollister, locally. And those vehicles have trouble keeping them running, and I've learned how to work on electric vehicles over the past few years. So this was like an opportunity to get a vehicle that was production, like Will said, has all the bells and whistles, iPod plug-in, OnStar, all the fancy stuff. And for me, 40 miles will do when I'm around town, when I'm around Salinas, when I'm just around, and from Berkeley to Menlo Park is 37 miles. So once I get my workplace to let me plug in there, then I won't even use electricity during my midweek commute.
Now, how do you not cheat? That's the thing about the Chevy Volt that I wonder about. You can switch to gasoline when you want to,
or you can't do it when you want to.
Just when you need to.
It only does it when you need to. It's going to use up the battery, and then instead of being like a Prius, which is a parallel hybrid where you switch kind of back and forth, it's series hybrid. So the wheels are mostly driven by the electric motors, and then when you run your battery down, then the gasoline motor recharges the batteries that run the wheels. So it's in series. So you're almost always running off the electric motors, except for one condition. If your battery's really low and you really need some torque, the gas engine will kick in. But most of the time you're driving electric.
So how often do you fill up the tank?
Well, that's a good question. I'd have to figure out. I think I've got a lot of miles on it, 4,600 miles in 2 months. And about 3,000 is on gas and 1,500 is on electric for me.
Mm-hmm.
So 3,000 miles, and I'm getting about 37 miles per gallon.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever that is.
Okay.
Much less than I used to. And if I'm just doing around town stuff, I just plug it in.
Right.
I don't need to.
Do you have a sense of what's the cost comparison between driving electric versus driving a regular gasoline-fueled vehicle?
In the long run, we'll have to see, because we have to see how well the batteries last. Now, GM's been conservative, and they're only letting us, maybe use from 90% down to 70% of the battery, so these batteries will last a full 10 years. If you had to replace that lithium pack, you're talking about at least $10,000 probably to replace the pack.
Mm-hmm.
What I gain is I don't have spark plugs. I do have an engine, so it depends how much I end up on gas as to how often I would need to do oil changes. So in the 30,000 miles I've done so far, there's a little thing that says you have used so much of your oil, and I've used 10% of my oil life. So I'm guessing I could go at least 10,000 before I need an oil change. But if I were driving almost all electric, as do an oil change maybe once a year just to keep the oil fresh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. So I don't have that kind of maintenance. Everybody has tires, so I'm not going to have tires. And then I'm not going to have things like transmission fluid, or I'm not going to have a timing belt. So I'm going to guess that the maintenance costs are going to be less relative to a gasoline car, excluding just the gas versus electric driving it, depending upon how they hold up, depending about the batteries.
So really, you mentioned something I hadn't thought of, which is lower maintenance costs, and then there's also just the lower fueling costs. And these days, with gas hitting up towards $4 a gallon, of course, people are very concerned about that as well.
Right. I figured for 40 miles of battery, it costs $1 to $1.50 for the electricity.
Oh, wow.
Because I have solar on my house, so I'm free because I have extra electricity. And then if you figure for an average car to go 40 miles, a gallon and a half of gas, maybe close to $5. So just that alone is a difference, just in the
Definitely. How important do you think it is to to pair an electric vehicle with solar? Will mentioned that he's done that too.
Well, I'm very much about using the technology to be as conservative as possible. I hate to waste anything. And as far as I'm concerned, the sun's sitting out there free, so why not use it? And I think that we'll eventually run out of fossil fuels or other things that we can burn, and the cost of those fuels will go up, and the cost of the technology will come down, and it'll just make economic sense to have solar. You know, a space station has solar panels. You don't send gasoline up there.
Well, and it's nice to think, when you think about the unrest in the Middle East, that you can do something that completely is independent from that, or is very much independent from that by comparison.
Yeah.
So you brought a little show and tell here.
I brought my charger, since you guys were talking about charger. This is the charger that comes with a volt. It's 110, so you've got your standard plug. And I think about 25 feet of cord. And this is the plug that Will was talking about. This is called J1772, which just is a name for a particular standard. And all of the new electric vehicles are going to have this plug, which is nice because the older electric vehicles, there were a number of different plugs. So then you got stuck at a station, and maybe the Avcon charger or the Magna charger, there were different things that you could plug in and different standards. So the Leaf is going to have this one. The Volt does. I believe the Ford is going to have it. And I believe the new Teslas are going to come out with this too. So it's going to be standardized.
When I look at the other end, it looks very familiar.
Standard 110 plug.
Standard 3-prong plug here.
Yep.
So that's great. And the whole carrying thing is just the cord. Just to hold it for the cord.
And as Will was saying, basically there's a switch in here. So what happens is when you plug in here, and you're getting ready to plug this into the car, but there's no power. The power doesn't come here, so if it's laying on the ground, someone doesn't get electrocuted. It's not live, like an extension cord would be. It's not live until you plug it into the vehicle. The vehicle sends it a little signal and says, okay, I'm here, and then the power comes out. And that's the same for the 220 chargers, too. So that's part of that standard for safety reasons.
So that's great. So it's really come up several notches. I think that it would be fair to characterize you and Will as pretty early adopters in the whole system. But what I'm hearing is, for somebody like me, I want to see that it works. I want to just buy it. I don't want to know how it works. We've reached that point.